Hello, I am the Irish guy, and pretty simple. We're 12 games into the Premier League, almost a quarter of the season. So right now, I'm gonna act like a stuffy teacher grading everybody's homework. You know, the type of lonely teacher who draws a smiley face on her banana just so she can pretend she has a friend in the staff room at lunch. But here, I'm gonna rank every Premier League manager from 20th to 1st based on how I think they're performing so far. Right, let's go. 20th, Vincent Kompany. I hate to do this. Last season, I was so impressed by Vincent Kompany's work at Burnley that I was even tipping him for both the Tottenham and Chelsea jobs. I thought he was the next super coach, so the fact that I've now had to chuck him to the foot of this list, to me, it is a bit sad. I tipped Kompany to finish 9th in the Premier League with Burnley this season. I mean, when he stole Sander Berg from Sheffield United in the summer, I thought it was like when Newcastle robbed Burnley of Chris Wood, a tactical move to steal a key player from a relegation rival. But Burnley are bottom after 12 games. Just 4 points on the board. Not a single win at Turf Moor. That is unacceptable. They have yet to beat anyone who was in the Premier League last season. Christ, the hideous Burnley team who went down under Brian Laws in 2010, they at least had a honeymoon, adrenaline-filled start to that season, winning their first 4 Premier League games at home against Man United, Everton, Sunderland and Birmingham. Turf Moor had seen 5 Premier League wins by Halloween. But this Burnley, they defend like a bunch of brain-dead badgers. Craig Bellamy has already told Gary Neville on the overlap that they won't be changing their style of play. I mean, the way he was speaking, it sounds like stubborn old company would sooner make love to Winnie the Pooh than go more defensive. We have seen this man's stubbornness before, like when he ignored every single person in the Etihad to shoot past Kasper Schmeichel for nearly 40 yards. But here, the way he's going, his stubbornness we'll get him sacked by Christmas. 19th, Marco Silva. Yeah, you're probably shocked to see Marco Silva second bottom of my list. But lads, Fulham have been quietly rotten so far this season. When comparing them to the fresh, free-flowing, adventurous cottagers who finished top half of the Premier League in May, so far, without Alexander Mitrovic up front, they have the attacking threat of a cup of monkey pee. They got off to a great start by winning Goodison Park on the opening day, but since then, they've been torn apart by Brentford, Man City, Chelsea, Tottenham, Man United, and Aston Villa. The only 2 Premier League teams they've beaten since the opening day were rotting in the Championship 6 months ago. They've scored just 10 goals in 12 matches. I know Silva's dragged them into the League Cup quarter-final. That is a plus, sure, but overall, I don't think anybody has noticed how hideous Fulham have actually been. Honestly, you cannot tell me that Silva's wife isn't constantly nagging him for turning down the mega bucks from the Saudi Pro League. I mean, Nuno Espirito Santo just lost his job over there. Just trade places. Let Santo come back to London whilst letting Silva go off to eat poisonous money in that league. Otherwise, his wife is probably just going to continue to make him sleep on the couch, still furious that her kids have to eat choco rice bought from Lidl instead of, I don't know, what do billionaires eat for breakfast? Monkey sandwiches? Oh, by the way, if you're here, hit subscribe! Trying to get to 181,000. I know it's a weird number, but trying to get to that many subscribers, let's try and do that today. That's gonna be our mountain. Lads, if we can get to 181 today, then in the next video, I don't know, I'll chuck a cup of tea in my face. 18th, Roy Hodgson. People don't want to be mean because Roy Hodgson looks like he sleeps in a coffin. Honestly, he looks like Dracula's dad. People don't want to pick on this guy because, yeah, at any moment you'll be terrified and have a stroke on the floor. But I'm sorry, I have been majorly disappointed with Crystal Palace this season. The potential for this squad is through the roof. They've got other midfield ballers like Ebereki Eze, Matthias Franca, and Michael Olise, who's now back from injury. 3 youngsters will probably wind up spending most of their careers in the Champions League. He's got 2 goalkeepers who both want to be involved at Euro 2024 with England, which must be a little awkward in the canteen. I mean, whenever someone mentions the summer tournament, both Henderson and Johnstone was awkwardly just sneezed in each other's cornflakes. But yeah, Palace have 4 wins and a brilliant win at Old Trafford, but otherwise, limp defeats against Arsenal, Tottenham and Everton at home. They were hammered by Aston Villa and Newcastle on the road. But what would really upset me as a Palace fan, they've got all this beautiful attacking flair, and yet those supporters were forced to sit through 2 ugly, drab, horrible 0-0s at home to both Fulham and Nottingham Forest. These attacking talents are wasted on Hodgson. 17th, Paul Heckingbottom. I am being nice to Paul Heckingbottom right now. I know I am. I'm a bit like that teacher who goes easy on the kid with dyslexia, even when he spells his name back to front. I mean, the fact I don't have this guy in the bottom 3 managers this season. Sorry, have I just like rat poison off a spoon? No. It's all about expectations. This is an absolutely rubbish Sheffield United squad who are doing pretty much what I thought they would. With Kompany, I thought he would finish top half. So yeah, 5 points from 12 games is hideous, yes. But I'm not shocked. The Blades have been largely appalling, but I will give Heckingbottom some slight credit. Sheffield have been in most of the games they played. They've only lost by 1 goal against Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest, Man City, Tottenham and Man United. They've nicked draws off both Everton and Brighton, beaten Wolves. Yes, losing 8-0 at home to Newcastle was a disaster, but they've been nowhere near as bad since, so he's clearly not lost the dressing room. For that alone, I give him credit. You know how embarrassing it must be for him to look his players in the eye after his tactical plan was annihilated by Eddie Howe on live TV? For that mini recovery alone, I'll give him 17th. 16th, Erik Ten Hag. I think Erik Ten Hag has been one of the luckiest managers in world football this season. How they are as high as 6th in the Premier League is almost dumbfounding because Manchester United have barely had a convincing performance all season long. Being rock bottom of an easy Champions League group, having conceded 11 goals in 4 matches is a disgrace. As was getting chucked out of the League Cup by Newcastle's B team, honestly, they defended their crown about as valiantly as some legless drunk trying to protect the cardboard Burger King crown on his head. In the league, they lost to Tottenham, Arsenal, Brighton, Crystal Palace and Man City, and have only beaten Wolves, Nottingham Forest, Burnley, Brentford, Sheffield United, Fulham and Luton by just 1 goal. They were minutes away from losing to the Bees at home too, instead having to be rescued in the last minute by some Scottish gargoyle who most likely stinks of cauliflower, and they were even having to rely on Henrik Larsson's son melting like a chocolate Santa Claus in the oven for that home win over Copenhagen. With the squad he has at his disposal, I think Ten Hag has been awful and far worse than the league table looks. 15th, David Moyes. Okay, you're probably choking on your yogurt to see me chuck David Moyes at the bottom 5 managers for performance levels when he's literally got West Ham in the top half despite losing their captain in the summer. But listen, the Hammers had a great start to the season, 10 points for 4 games, but since then they've lost 5 league games, linked to a pretty rubbish defeat in Greece in the Europa League. Make no mistake about it, there is insane levels of technical ability in this Hammer squad, and so to have won just 2 league games since September 1st, managing to lose at home to Everton, conceding a combined 11 goals in the last 5 league games, yeah, I think Moyes has been quite poor. 14th, Andoni Iraola. He's getting there, alright? Andoni Iraola has been unlucky. No way a Bournemouth's performance is only merited just 9 points from 12 games. Yeah, I know he had to wait 10 matches to get a win, and he's still waiting for his first victory on the road, but please stop the sack talk. I think the Cherries have looked decent. They just haven't had the luck. It'll come, alright. 13, Steve Cooper. Look, I said that Nottingham Forest would get relegated, so Steve Cooper is clearly doing slightly better than I thought. Look, I don't want to be too mean about this guy, because yeah, he does look a bit like someone who got his face stuck in the wind when he was putting funny faces as a child, but Forest have had 2 brilliant results this season, winning at Stamford Bridge in September and beating Aston Villa 2-0 at home 2 weeks ago. But that's about it. This is a club who signed nearly 50 players in 18 months. They added some big names this summer, like Anthony Elanga, Matt Turner, Nicholas Dominguez, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Ibrahim Sangare, and yet their results have been about as awe-inspiring as the sequel to Big Mama's House. Yeah, I mean, I'd sooner eat a cake filled with dog intestines than sit through that mess again. Forest have been largely rubbish. They went nearly 2 months without a win, were dumped out of the League Cup by Burnley. In the Premier League, they've been handed home fixtures against all 3 newly promoted clubs, and easy as pie start to the season. That's almost 3 guaranteed tap-ins. Yeah, they only managed to beat 1 of them, scrambling a last-minute win over Sheffield United back in August. Honestly, 13 points from 12 games. If Cooper keeps up that form all season long, I'll make no mistake, they will be going down. And honestly, if that bloke goes back to being no longer famous, then it really will just be back to buying potential wives from Egypt off the internet. 12th, Thomas Frank. Brentford are a strange one, missing their talisman Ivan Toney. I don't think the performance has been too bad. Sure, it was a bit embarrassing that they won 1 of the first 8 league games, but they then won 3 on the bounce, including a victory at Stamford Bridge. I don't know. 16 points from 12 games when they're missing a 20-goal-a-season superstar. I don't think the Bees have done too badly at all. 11th, Sean Dyche. Look, Sean Dyche had an absolute pig-rotten start to the season. I should know. I can still taste the milk. 1 point for the opening 5 games. That was bad. Let's be real. Sean Dyche was lucky not to lose his job. Walking through the corridors of the training ground after that, he probably felt like James Bond walking through some supervillain's maze. But since mid-September, the Toffees have largely been great. Sure, losing at home to Luton was embarrassing, but winning away at Brentford, West Ham and Crystal Palace, thumping Bournemouth at home, sneaking a point off Brighton, oh yeah, and a pretty resilient dog display in the Merseyside derby, in a match where Ibrahim Konate looked like someone who'd been out for dinner with the ref the night before. Honestly, they were probably blowing each other kisses in between mouthfuls of steak. But yeah, for Dyche, horrible start, while their form over the last 2 months, quality. Yeah, I'll have him as high as 11th. 10th, Rob Edwards. Look, I realize it probably looks absolute bananas for me to have Rob Edwards in the top 10 highest performing coaches in the league when he's literally perched in the relegation zone on just 6 lonely points. Make it make sense. The man is technically failing. 1 Premier League win from 12 matches. Luton Town have as many points at this stage of the season as Derby County did in 2007, the worst Premier League team of all time, and I have him 10th? I'm sorry, have I just drank diseased cat food from a bin? No, lads, look at the state of Luton's tiny squad. This isn't Premier League material. They're still irregularly giving minutes to a midfielder they had in the conference. What Luton haven't done is disgrace themselves by getting thumped every week. Of their A-League defeats, 5 of them have been just by 1 goal. They've been in most matches right until the end. This man who was second away from masterminding the greatest night in Luton's history, just actual moments away from beating Liverpool. They picked up a famous win at Goodison Park. They have given it a proper go. The only real horrible moment was losing at home to Burnley. Yeah, that was a match where Edwards doesn't get a pass for that one dreadful showing in early October. Yeah, he did look a bit like someone with the tactics of a pumpkin sandwich. But otherwise, this little chicken nugget of a team, a club who virtually played in someone's back garden. They haven't conceded more than 3 goals in a match since the opening day. So yeah, 10th, 9th, Gary O'Neill. Look, there you go. There is credit for Gary O'Neill. Don't get me wrong, horrendous start to the season. People just conveniently forgot he lost 4 of the first 5 league games as Wolves' boss. I mean, beating Man City was a fluke. They had just 1 shot on target and somehow scored 2. Being invited into MNF was a bit out of place. Yay, snuck a revenge mission win at Bournemouth and recently scrambled a last minute win over Spurs. But the week before, he lost to the club's bottom club. He was booted out of the League Cup after getting tactically obliterated by Kieran McKenna at Ipswich Town in a battle of the guys who used to make the tea and hand out the cones at Liverpool and Man United. O'Neill has done better than I thought, but please, calm down. 8th, Mauricio Pochettino. Mauricio Pochettino should be thrilled to wind up 8th on the list because, lads, he has been the most up and down guy in the list. He was the worst performing manager in September. 1 point from 3 games. 0 goals scored against Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth and Aston Villa. It was hideous. It almost felt like an episode of Scooby-Doo, where he'd rip off his mask and it would still be Graham Potter in a suit. But ever since Cole Palmer came into the team in October, they have been great. Beating Fulham and Burnley, they should have beaten Arsenal. It's just Robert Sanchez had a moment where his brain seemed to be replaced by a sticky poached egg. Sure, losing to Brentford was poor, but they've scored 8 goals in the last 2 games against Tottenham and Man City. They soared in the League Cup quarter-finals. All in all, considering the absolute mess he inherited, a Chelsea team who could not score, I think Pochettino's work has been very promising. 7th, Roberto De Zerbi. Roberto De Zerbi is having an up and down season. I'm going to cut him some slack because Brighton are for the first time trying to cope with European football. Look, I know they're now nearly 2 months without a Premier League win, and I am getting Potter vibes lately because that man was so obsessed by a 1-1 draw. He picked up about 30 of them as Brighton boss, and De Zerbi has now drawn his last 3 games 1-1. He also had the most embarrassing moment of his Premier League career, watching his defense concede 6 at Villa Park against a team who were in a lower form of European competition. But the start of the season was amazing. 5 wins from the opening 6 games. Scoring 18 goals in 6 matches. Absolutely blitzing Man United to shreds at Old Trafford. They also recovered from a European howler, losing home to AK Athens. That Greek team were supposed to be the weakest side in the group. Yeah, I mean, they since nicked the point at Marseille and beaten Ajax home and away without conceding a goal. Shocking the fact they've got an injury list longer than a Shakespeare play. I think, given all that context, it's mostly been good. 6th, Pep Guardiola. Look, I know it's nuts to see Pep Guardiola as low as 6th when he's once again breezed to the top of the league with ease. But when judging City by their ridiculously high treble-winning standards, it's not been perfect. Sure, the first 6 league games were immense, 100% maximum points, but losing to Wolves was dreadful, as was dropping 3 points at the Emirates the very next week. They recovered well to squeak a win over Brighton, punch up their City rivals at Old Trafford, and stick 6 past Bournemouth. But I'm sorry, scoring 4 at Stamford Bridge and still not winning. The first 4-4 draw of Pep Guardiola's entire career, it was sloppy. Their Champions League defense has been almost perfect so far, but being knocked out of the League Cup in the 3rd round, and they lost the Community Shield yet again, and they only managed to lift this UEFA Super Cup for beating Sevilla on penalties. You know, that bottom half Spanish club? Sorry, Pep, but it ain't been perfect. 5th, Mikel Arteta. Again, Arsenal have been good this season. Sure, but it's not been perfect. They're currently 3rd in the league after 12 games. I don't know. It feels like they've just been nicking wins by the odd goal. There've been 3 2-2 draws in the league, which hints at major sloppiness. They were beaten by Newcastle, knocked out of the League Cup by West Ham, and embarrassingly lost to Lens in the Champions League. Don't get me wrong, it's mostly been absolute quality work, and beating both Manchester clubs at home was brilliant, but there's a lot to improve. 4th, Jurgen Klopp. Liverpool are back. Imagine telling any Liverpool fan last season that by mid-November, after 12 matches, they would be level on points with Arsenal and hovering just 1 point behind Man City. And if it weren't for VAR clearly having a mini stroke at Spurs, that Liverpool team would now be top of the league and still be in the reckoning to go the entire season unbeaten. They haven't dropped a single point at Anfield so far. They're in the League Cup quarter-finals, top of the Europa League group. They've been virtually flawless. 3rd, Ange Postecoglou. Look, Ange Postecoglou has been brilliant this season, and up until 2 weeks ago, he would have been top of this list after a frankly quite stupid 26 points from the first 10 games. This is the first Tottenham manager who's been unable to pick Harry Kane since Juande Ramos. He's done great, but he's shown worrying signs in November. A complete unwillingness to just shut up shop and defend. Went down to 9 men against Chelsea. Failing to hold on to a lead at Wolves wasn't smart either. So whilst this Aussie coach has been brilliant so far, he's shown he doesn't really have any form of plan B. So that's why he's not top of the list. And also, he's not being forced to deal with the added strains of European football. Unlike the next two chaps. Second, Unai Emery. Look, people are probably expecting me to have Unai Emery top of the charts. And yeah, he's been brilliant at Aston Villa, but no, don't get me wrong. This free-flowing, dangerous Villa team are an absolute menace. And they've been mostly top class. They've won every single match at Villa Park. That is unheard of for this club. But there has been enough horrible results to keep him off the top spot. Shipping 5 at European rivals Newcastle was terrible. Slipping to a 3-0 defeat at Anfield showed an absence of belief. A 2-0 loss at Nottingham Forest was ugly. And a cup specialist like Emery exiting the League Cup at home to Everton was strange. And losing 3-2 at Legia Warsaw looked pretty costly too. Yes, they've been 85% brilliant this season. Scoring 29 goals at Villa Park by mid-November is almost obscene. But I'm gonna go with second. First, Eddie Howe. You probably all think that I'm insane. Eddie Howe is languishing 5 points behind Emery? What am I talking about? Lads, aside from the newly promoted teams, Howe is the one who's been given the biggest escalation in challenges from last season. This is a man who's been dealt the most horrendous run of injuries. His marquee summer signing has been banned for 10 months. He has been chucked as bottom seeds into the hardest Champions League group in the entire competition. Everything has gone against him, and yet they're still 7th in the league. They battered both Aston Villa and Crystal Palace by 4 goals at home. They cracked in a record-breaking 8-0 win at Sheffield United just days after a grueling 0-0 slog at AC Milan. Sure, losing home and away to Borussia Dortmund was disappointing, but don't forget, they absolutely slapped PSG like a wet fish on match day 2. They're just 2 wins away from another League Cup final after knocking out both Manchester clubs without conceding a goal when they had Paul Dummett in defence both nights, and they were the ones to stop Arsenal's unbeaten run. Sure, they just lost to Bournemouth because they were forced to start the match with a 17-year-old child in midfield. But don't forget, that was only Newcastle's first league defeat in nearly 2.5 months. Howe hasn't moaned about his injuries. Considering what this man has had to cope with, I think Howe is the best performing manager in the league. Yeah. Anyway, that's what do you think? Let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give a like, subscribe as always. I'll talk to you in a while.